These are my favorite controllers that I reviewed this past year for fighting games. Let's get started. So first off, we get the Xbox Elite Series 2 core controller. Everything about this controller is just so well built. No flex whatsoever. The plastic, high quality, buttons, very premium feeling, and you actually get a real rubber grip here. It's nice. The best thing about this controller over any other controller that I'm going to show you, it's just how comfortable it is. Microsoft really went out of their way to make this as ergonomic as possible. And you can tell, check out my wrist. Because the handle is angled outwards, there's no bend at all. You can use this for a long period of time. My favorite thing about Microsoft controllers are the switches. Listen to this. They're super clicky and tactile. That's because they use metal-based switches. And the tension on these are perfect. They're not hard to press at all, and they're not too light either. Same thing with the D-pad. Since this is a disc D-pad, it's probably better for 2D fighters than 3D fighters. In terms of the sticks, the cool thing is you can take off the cap here, and then you can adjust the tension to it. So if you like a light tension, then you can do that. Or you want something that's a little bit harder, more tension, you can adjust it to your liking. Since this is the core controller, you don't get the back buttons included. You can get that separately. What you do get is the ability to adjust the trigger locks. So there's 3 levels that you can do. Out of all the controllers that I'm going to show you, this is probably the most well-rounded controller. It's probably the best general use controller. Next up, we have the ESWAP X2 Pro, and just like the name suggests, you can swap these modules out. So if you don't like the joystick being up here, you can switch it to down here and put the D-pad module up here. Now this becomes more of a PlayStation layout, right? You can also get the Fighting Pack T-Mod, and that way you have a disc D-pad and additional buttons. Put this here, put this here, and now you have a fight pad. How cool is that? When I play fighting games, this is the configuration that I have it. So I have the D-pad down here, a disc D-pad for 2D fighters for motion inputs, and then the D-pad up here, I use this for directional inputs. So diagonals are great on these. And this D-pad that comes with the controller is really good. It's really tactile and clicky. They use my switches. Same thing with the buttons. You get your typical Xbox layout here for the shoulder buttons and the triggers. Now, the trigger is way up here. I don't like that. I have pretty long fingers, but it takes some effort for me to reach up here. So I kind of wish that this thing is kind of located a little bit lower. And you do get trigger stops as well. You do get 4 back buttons here, but they're so small and tiny. I wish they were a little bit bigger and located on the handles. In terms of fighting games, this D-pad is really good. It's probably the best D-pad that THRUSTMASTER has put out yet. The next controller on the list is the FightWedge V2. So this is version 2. And as you can see here, this is purely a fight pad in a wedge shape. So kind of like a Super Nintendo shape. It's got 6 really big buttons here. And these are linear keyboard switches. Just super satisfying when you press them. I do kind of wish that they are a little bit smaller though, because sometimes when I press the middle buttons, I would accidentally press the other buttons on the outside of it, because I don't have any room left. So if these buttons are a little smaller, that will probably mitigate that issue. But you'll get used to it over time. It's got 4 shoulder buttons. These are the same linear switches, but really the magic here comes with the D-pad. And you get 2 options. This one is actually a slider. You can see the square gate. So think of this like playing with a joystick, right? But on a controller form. It's a really cool idea. However, I don't prefer this because double tap is kind of hard. There's a lot of travel that you gotta do. So oftentimes when I try to do double taps, it just doesn't trigger or doesn't trigger fast enough. What I do like is that there is a D-pad on this. So it's just like a normal D-pad. However, this is where the magic happens. This thing spins. Look at this. So you can do double quarter circle forward hella fast. Actually, it's just really good with any motion inputs. Just fantastic because it spins with you, so you don't have to slide your thumb around the surface and that'll tear your thumb up. I wish more controllers do this. This is a really unique thing to this D-pad. For 360 motions, I like to rest my thumb in the middle and it's just kind of rotate like this. But for every other motion, you can just slide the D-pad around. Out of all the controllers shown here, this is probably the best controller for Street Fighter 6 or any 2D fighter that requires 6 buttons. Alright, next on the list is the Asura 2 Pro. This is from a company called BEITONG, and I'm a big fan of their controllers. It's just very simple, as you can see. There's not much to it. It looks like an Xbox controller. It's got 2 back buttons, and this is a very affordable controller. It goes anywhere between 45 to 50 bucks only. The thumbsticks has Hall effect. Same thing with the triggers actually. The face buttons are nice and clicky. These kind of feel like my switches, but the switches on the D-pad is different. I'm not sure what kind of switches these use, but they don't feel as clicky. However, this D-pad is just fantastic. It's just so accurate and easy to use. Cardinal directions, especially diagonals, are just on point. And I feel like the D-pad is just a perfect size. It's just your typical cross-shaped D-pad, and sometimes that's all it takes, right? Just make something simple and works well. You don't need to be fancy. This D-pad is also really good with motion inputs. So it's just all around really good controller for fighting games. And lastly, I have the Turtle Beach Stealth Pivot controller. Out of all the controllers that I've shown you, this is probably my favorite one so far. This is a controller that I've used more than any other controller that I've tested this year. Alright, on the surface, it just looks like an Xbox controller, right? There's trigger stops here. There's 2 back buttons. But check this out. So I'm going to twist this guy to the right. You see that? The joysticks are shortened. I'm going to flip it over. And there's a little switch here. So I'm going to do that. Do this on this side. And I'm going to follow this line. So there's an arrow right here. So I'm going to press down. Turn it around. Same thing here. So I'm going to press down here. And what do we have here? We have a 6-button fight pad. Isn't that cool or what? Honestly, this is probably the most innovative thing I've seen in a long time. Essentially, you have 2 controllers in one. So in a way, this is a modular controller, just like the ESWAP X2. But with this guy, you gotta kind of take the modules out, which is a cool idea in itself. However, I think this implementation is way better. It's just there, right? If you need it, you just flip it around. If you don't, you kind of put it away. Whereas with this guy, if I want to use the joystick, I have to take these out and then replace it. So it's a little less convenient. And let me tell you, the D-pad on here is just fantastic. You would know if a D-pad is good or not when you fight somebody who's really good. And really, any mistake or any drop combo will cost you a match. And with this D-pad, any losses that I suffer, I really don't feel like it's on the D-pad. This thing is just super accurate with cardinal directions. It looks a lot like an Xbox D-pad, and I love this D-pad. However, this D-pad is located down here, which I don't prefer, and what do you know, it's in a better location. And the switches that they use on here feel very much like the Xbox metal switches. However, the face buttons are a lot heavier. I got used to it over time, but I wish that these are a little bit softer. It takes a lot of effort to press these guys. And the surface on this D-pad is very smooth, so you can slide your finger around really easily when you do motion inputs. I know that there's been mixed opinions on this controller, but for me personally, it's just fantastic. I just love the shape of it. It's very comfortable to use, very much like an Xbox controller, but the D-pad is in the right place. It's really good. If you just play fighting games like I do, then this is a great option. Alright, that's gonna be it for me. Hopefully you found the video to be helpful. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more, and take care now.